That's the workshop gavel there. Are we, yeah, sound's on, everybody ready over there? All righty. Good evening. We're gonna call to order this, work session of the Board of Commissions, January 17th, 2023 at 4 o'clock. I'm just gonna acknowledge that everyone's here, but Mr. Loper will take roll call during our regular session, and we'll have our invocation and pledge then. So I'm going to turn it over to our county manager for this work session to discuss codes and ordinances, and then whatever else we have time for that's on the commission's agenda.
This meeting actually, I believe, came through a request to a commissioner regarding getting additional feedback to the new ordinance regarding the surface mines. And that's already been passed, but with a lot of these, we can simply refine it as better ideas come about.
Text amendments.
Yeah, there you go.
So with that, I think it's Commissioner Deloach, was it just Mr. Ron who wanted to speak on it?
Yes, we had a conversation on that. He offered some suggestions and just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't get a chance last time, and just wanted to address us and bring up a couple points.
Yeah, and so
thought it'd be important.
Mr. Ron up to
yeah, I was to say, if you all recall what we did, we made kind of your 10 acres or less ponds a conditional use under the I think the AR zoning. Anything larger than that is a PD, where we're just going to basically look at the site, and kind of come up with the best, recommendations that you have for, you don't want to put a berm somewhere where it's not, where it's not going to benefit anybody. So it allows us a little bit more flexibility to make some recommendations, and so that's where we left it. But like I said, it could always be refined.
Go ahead and share with us some thoughts on how we can, we're always looking to improve these things, and we're going to just keep tweaking them until we get a.
Well, how does, yeah, I don't like that.
There we see you now.
Seems like we have some builders around here that
Get
put a
your
beam
hem
through here.
Well, those are structural.
Like a cattle
That's-
chute.
We wanted to get rid of them, but they're structural beams. We couldn't. So.
Well, I'll tell you, like the fella told me when they was building a house, if you don't want them there, they don't have to be there. He said, you see how far they expanded the Dallas Cowboys stadium, didn't you? You don't have to have a beam in there. There ain't no post in the middle of a football field. What me and Jamie started talking about was we did attend the last workshop. How this conversation come up as we listened to y'all discuss the berm terms, this 10-year deal, and we listened to all 6 of y'all discuss it, and then all of a sudden the meeting was closed, and we sat on through. We had business at the meeting. We sat on through. It was passed. It was done. I asked Jamie, I said, that's a heck of a workshop y'all have. He said, what you mean? I said, you open it up to the public, never give the public a minute to speak on behalf of the public, and then you pass it at the end of the meeting. That's whenever he decided, hey, I'm going to mention it, that we get more people involved in these workshops, let them stand up and talk. Some of what we talked about was stuff just like the berm. The berm would be an added cost to a dirt pit. It might fit certain situations, but make sure that you leave it open as far as for each individual dirt pit that you're talking about. That would be my suggestion. If it's a dire need, then do it, but it's a heck of an expense to add back in that's only going to roll downhill. Y'all know that cost.
We don't have a requirement that they have to have a dirt berm. It's based on certain conditions, right?
Yeah, and you're 100% right. That's how we did it. We if you did something that's straight zoning, right? You'd say it's conditional industrial or something to that effect, then you had these berm rules. It couldn't take, without a variance, the considerations in for each site, right? So you may have an AR property behind it, but there might not be a home for miles behind it, or it might be wetlands or something to that effect where, putting a berm there doesn't protect anybody, but if you had straight zoning with that rule in it, it just simply would have required it. So that's kind of the idea behind PD, is it just really allows us for the applicant to come in with a proposal. Sorry about that. We look at the site, and then we use, and say, well, you got some houses over there. I'd put some protections in there, but there's nothing else around it.
Yeah, so I think we agree with what you're saying. I want to make sure.
Well,
that
and
that
didn't
maybe
think it
what-
was in stone.
That may be what we have. For a 10 acre or less where it can be done in AR, we don't require a berm right off the bat, do we?
No.
Right, and that's what you're saying, it shouldn't be required. Because I agree with you, you got wetlands and space. There was one near Low McCall Road, for example, where the trees were pretty much all gone.
Right.
And that buffer, 50 foot, whatever it was, I mean, there was people's backyards. So we had them put a berm there to help keep the noise and dirt and dust down.
And I'm not opposed to, that's not what I'm saying. I'm maybe
Well,
not
required on
explaining
every-
myself
Every,
right, but just using that for an example, before we put a stamp on it, that this is what we're gonna do. The different dirt pits, they need to be very fluid, to be able to move, I ain't gonna say rules around, but
but to fit the area where
to
it's at.
fit it,
And I just wanna
because it's my understanding that we was trying to, or maybe y'all did, I don't know, I don't come to every meeting, I've come to the last 12, but other than that, after tonight, I'm done, I got other things to do. But like, from what I understand, the meetings that I've sat in, we're trying to push the dirt pits to get closer to the truck routes. We're trying to do those things. So I guess I'm going to, not just that one meeting that I was at, just some of what I'm hearing. And in my opinion, me being in the dirt pit, I don't quite understand why you would want the dirt pits to be on the truck routes. One reason, that's your highest, most valuable land. Typically, you'd put a dirt pit on the less desirable land off the beaten path, not on the main drag. Because a dirt pit does not need road frontage. It does not need that, because just our pits, for an example, we're gonna pull out, let's just say we pull out on a dump truck route, on a truck route, and I'm working on your driveway. Do you live on a truck route? You don't live on a truck route. Jamie don't live on a truck route. I'm gonna haul dirt to your driveway.
That's
So
one-
I'm
but
still
that's
gonna
one haul.
ride.
That's one haul. Mr. Ron, what we're trying to do is prevent 50 trucks from getting on that same road every day that would cause damage to the road.
But they're still gonna do it, because you're not requiring the dump trucks to live there.
Yeah, but it won't be.
They
that
still
one-
live in the rural parts of your county. They're gonna travel all them same roads. They're either gonna travel, and I'm not saying change what you're thinking. I'm giving you a different way to think about it. They're gonna ride in front of your house, whether or not you have a truck route, whether or not they have a load of dirt on it, whether or not either way, they're gonna ride in front of your house.
Well, they're supposed to take a truck route to my house if there is one. My house would not have one, so they could go straight there.
No houses is gonna have them, because we're not gonna try to put housing developments on truck routes.
Well, you're not really following. For instance, if you had a subdivision at the end of, say, end of Courthouse in McCall Road, you should not be coming down non-truck route roads. You could McCall, because it's gonna be a truck route. But say at Walton, you need to go out to 21, you need to come around, you need to find the truck routes to get to these areas, so you're off the county roads as much as possible. That's the goal,
I understand what you're saying,
yeah.
but absent of what you're saying, I live in a reality world. They're not gonna do that. That's not gonna
To
happen.
get ticketed if they don't do that, but.
Well, we got a sticker on the truck that says we ain't getting no ticket. We got,
I forget what the sheriff has implemented, but if it's a local delivery, he has some type of stickers now that's issued to local
So they don't have to take the truck route that's
As well as
closest
the
to them?
most direct route.
Most direct route. That's just one way to look at it. But that's just another point. I could probably stand here the entire hour and just give you example after example, but whenever we have these workshops, we want to make sure that we're thinking about somebody like me. I'm in the dirt business. You know, we're going to haul dirt. That's just what we do, you know. So I appreciate y'all letting us speak a little bit, and I hope that I can get more involved in this stuff, because something else like the term to come here and reapply for another permit. I think we're at, what, 5 years or 10?
10, isn't it?
10.
10.
To keep that in mind, like our Indigo Dirt Pit, it's been open for over 30 years. Means I'd have done had to come back here 3 different times to get approval to keep the dirt pit going. What happens whenever the next board or commission don't want that dirt pit to be there? What happens whenever, I mean, it's permitted. We done bought the permit. The permit's gonna cost you. We done put up the bond. We done spent all the money. And let's just say we hit 2008. You don't get 300 loads of dirt coming out a day. All of a sudden you get 3. But you hit a time like that and you're not selling dirt. But I done spent all my money getting the land bought, permitting it, engineering, all of that type stuff. And then you get up 10 years from now and the commission says no. What do you do then?
Let me hit Tim weigh in and address this after I share what I think that purpose is, not to shut the thing down in 10 years. I don't even think, first of all, that we could legally do that.
You
once
can't.
permit- Right. So it's not intended for that.
But it said you had to reapply for the.
Right, well, with us, for our license to be a dirt pit in our county, very few folks, you may be complying. We had like 60 pits and they had not been filing if they're filing, they're not giving them to anybody. They need to file, they need to be active. If they're not active, you know, they lose their permitting process, their permit. And so there's no control, no administration of the landmines that we have in the county. We didn't even know where they were. Some had grown in size because they went out and did things to them. Requiring a time to relook at it, it's a time when we can go out and look and see, all right, this was for instance, a 10-acre mine. Well, now it's 15 acres. I don't remember them coming back asking for that. You follow what I'm saying?
I
Particularly-
do, but that's a
particularly the ones that
state
did-
issue, not a county issue.
Well,
Well-
I would disagree. We're part of the, go ahead.
I think there were 2 different time limits. The one on the small mine was simply because if you're applying, basing that it's going to be, you know, you're digging a pine, but you're selling the dirt, you know, then you shouldn't take 30 years, right? If it does, you need to apply for the PD. But I think the intent was on the PD, the 10 years was simply just a pulse check because of just to, you know, to
Make
revert
sure it's
back to
still
the previous
operating,
zoning.
make sure it's still active, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's to revert back to the previous zoning so that, you know, most of the time, you know, we have like you know, we approve all these zonings for the surface mines, but then in there is the word that it'll revert back to its original zoning once the mine is closed and
right.
so on and so forth. But nobody ever checks on it. You know, so you know, this kind of allows us to do kind of a checkpoint every 10 years. If this thing's closed, let's revert it back to its original zoning. If it's still operating and it's still got a state permit, you know, then it still runs. That's kind of what the purpose of it was, because we've got these mines out there that, and I may be wrong on this, and we've had some phone calls with the EPD guys who, you know, kind of admit that they're undermanned and
That's right.
on these, where, you know, guys just keep their mine you know, technically operational even though they haven't touched it in years, simply because they don't want to spend the money on the
Closing it
reclamation
out.
process. So
Well, but that holds their bond.
Yeah.
You know, that holds their bond, but the permitting, if I understand, that's our state permit.
Right.
So it is state.
It is a state
It's-
permit.
The county is just, all the county is doing is the zoning. We don't get a permit from the county. So the county can't close the permit because we never got a permit from the county.
We can't close
And
it.
it's not inspected by the county, it's inspected by the state. So this 10 years, let's just say that I have a permit from the county. I'm inspected, from the state. I'm inspected by the state. But then all of a sudden, I don't qualify because now I'm in AR1 versus industrial, which mine now is in industrial. I know we changing to PD, but mine now is industrial. So it changes from industrial back to AR1, but I still got a permit. I'm still up to par. So to say that the county could stop us,
As long as the state approves your permit, you can still have that surface mine there. But with the business license that we're instituting with this zoning, right?
What's that?
License that we're instituting with this, right? There's gonna be a license from us. Then it requires that you give us a copy of the reports that you're giving to the state to show how active it is,
so we'll have to get a separate business license for the dirt pit?
for the dirt pit, yep.
Is that already written? Is that already a rule?
That's what we just implemented. So we have a.
See, I missed that part.
Technically, it is.
Yeah.
It's just that we haven't been enforcing it.
Right.
And, it's,
It's still a business.
it just,
Ours
any
falls
business
under
within
our
the United
entire
States-
business. We got a business license, state of Georgia, to do our work. Same thing with cutting grass, to anything,
Right.
I don't have a special indicated over here by itself business license. Maybe I should.
It's with the county.
She shakes it off.
Well,
She says no.
the 10 years, I don't think is gonna impact a mine that's permitted by the state, because we can't shut it down. But it's gonna, hang on a second, it's gonna allow us to monitor it. For instance, if there's a pit that hadn't been used for 10 or 12 years, and they're just not wanting to reclaim it and slope the banks and all those things, we still can't do anything about that other than report to the state.
Right.
We've got the reports for the last 8 years. There's been no activity. It looks like to us that the whole 5 acre or 10 acre or 25 acres has been completed. So all we can probably really do is report to the state and get them to take action, because they don't have, as he just said, they don't have the team to be able to monitor that.
But see, if they'd have done that on my indigo pit, because I met the acreage the last 10 years, I'd have had to probably stand up here and fight over it, because it ain't a matter of this big, because the permit don't end this big. You go deep as you want. You go to China if you want. There's no depth in it. So yes, I could dig the top 10 acres out or 30 acres out in a year and a half. But if my good sand's down there in the bottom, I'm gonna sit back and wait, because just for an example, like my indigo pit, that has basically turned over to a sand pit, because it's got some of the best coarse sand, septic tank sand in the very bottom. So when we was ready to close it out at about 22 to 25 feet, one day we just decided we was closing it out. We done. We fit to slope the banks, we out of here. We just decided, so man, dig a hole in the bottom of this thing just to see how deep it'll go. Dug a hole, had a pile of the most beautiful sand you ever seen. But we had 18-inch layer of clay in there. I looked at the sand, I said, I don't know nothing about sand, but they tell me that this sand ain't good for nothing. I'm sitting on the tailgate of the truck one day, pile of sand sitting out there. Had a friend of mine that's in the sand business, he stopped by, we just shooting the bull on the tailgate. He said, where'd you get the sand from? I said, believe it or not, it's underneath all this. He said, you kidding me? I said, I'm not kidding you. We go out there, he gets a sample of it. Immediately gets a bucket, takes it to his lab, he tests the sand. Today, the very first job that we sold that sand to is it met all the requirements for Tybee Island to rebuild all of their sand dunes and all of their beach restoration. We hauled
I don't know how many thousands of loads.
6,000 loads from Indigo to Tybee Island, built all of their sand dunes, all of the sand dunes that you go down to on Tybee right now,
No, that's great, but I'm not sure that our
That's-
ordinance is gonna keep you from doing that in the future.
because
I
if
think
you
your
come out
concern
there and
is
tell me that my 10 acres
Here
is,
and interprets it a certain way. We all, I think, are in agreement.
Right.
But I'm telling you, elections have consequences, and you get a different group of folks up here that's not from these parts, that's anti-everything.
Is there some
But
way?
we cannot close out a permit. And
We
we
can't-
cannot stop them from using a permit. We just have a license that allows us to make sure we're getting the reports and we know
We
that
could-
if it is done, it's sloped, and if it's not done, it's fine.
We could look at rewriting that in a way where the renewal process is more of a checks and balances thing, because it's not.
Versus
you-
a pull a permit
Yeah,
thing.
exactly, because you're gonna go.
Criteria.
you
Yeah,
got
right.
an
You're
inspection
you're
team
gonna
in
do
the
right
county.
thing, but
Come look at
two
it.
other guys might not.
It wasn't really pulling your permit, it was automatic, the way I read it, and that's why I was asking, can we reread it? In 10 years, it will automatically revert back to your original zoning, and then you will reapply for your rezoning and go back to operation.
Is that
Well, all
true?
of y'all are gone, what are we, how,
It
what
it
if we don't
shouldn't
do
do
that?
that. It should renew before it
That's
reverts back.
different. That's a,
Yeah.
That's
That's
how
very
I,
different.
that's
Yeah.
how
So
I
how does it read now, Tim? Make sure if that's right, then we can tweak that.
Yeah,
and
we
do a
need to
text
clean
amendment.
that up where it's a easy renewal process.
We were looking for a
Come
way to
back, you
monitor
do a
it.
renewal, and
Right,
it doesn't affect
Well,
anything.
and I
checks
tell you-
balances, making sure that we are
Yeah.
doing what we're supposed to.
And
do.
I'm
That's
gonna be
all.
different than others. I don't mean to be wearing my halo today. Come look at my pit anytime you want.
Oh, yeah, yeah. and
Yeah, it's
I
not a question of
encourage
that.
you.
It
We've got
was,
60 other pits out there,
That's
and
the
a lot of them
thing,
haven't
is the other
been used and touched.
Yeah,
and
but
haven't
ain't but
sloped.
6 of them active. You ain't got to go but 6 of them. The other 30, you just go one time. You go to the active pits, go and see if they following the rules. And because you got the county inspector, my God, he's done come out there 3 times on McCall Road to shut us down. So I know he's got time. But being he didn't, being we wasn't out of compliance, guess what? We made friends with the guy. We tell him now, stop by and see us sometime. We don't have a problem with getting checked. Because if you're doing right, then you ain't worried about getting checked. If we in the wrong, tell me where I'm in the wrong, because we want to make it right.
Yeah.
We
You might
never
remember
go
during-
in
how
trying
Abe
to-
said that we had any issue with your particular company. This was bigger, the reason we were looking at this. Because one of my issues was having to put these things, industrial properties in the middle of AR. Because we already had people who requested zoning of industrial because they were next to a industrial zoning because it was sand, dirt pit. And I said, we gotta quit putting these dirt pits as industrial zoning. We gotta do PDs or AR, so that's a lot of it. And then we
because it
realized
is
it was.
spot zoning by definition.
Yeah,
when we were
spot
doing
zoning.
that, yeah.
Well, and the
Because
thing
Bob wants
is,
to come
do
over
I
and put a
agree with it being
warehouse.
industrial zoning? I really don't. I hate the fact that you put me in the highest tax bracket of the county, and
don't
I
want
mean,
you
I
there.
prefer you to not.
I don't
So
want you
I'm
there.
not gonna talk you out of taking industrial zoning away.
We want it
I don't know how the
conditional,
tax assessor's gonna look at it, but.
we want it AR conditional,
there.
and we want it PD. And that way, the person who wants to build a warehouse can't come up here and
It's
say, well,
actually-
my warehouse is gonna be quieter than that dirt mine over there. You let them, you know what I'm saying? We trying to
they're,
stay.
they're industrial. We've had a lot of people get confused.
That was the first issue we
And try to,
resolved.
they'll do due
Okay,
diligence.
so, the 10-year didn't sound familiar, and so now I understand why. So the way that it works, just so you know, the 10 acres or less is 3 years, right? And then it's actually 5 years, it has to go up for renewal, in front of the board, for anything that requires that's an acre or less, acre or more, and is in a PDMR, right? And so basically, if you chose to go the PDMR route, right, you could do you could do something less than 10 acres in a PDMR if you want. But if you chose to go the PDMR route, then it requires every 5 years to go through this process again. But again, that's the whole point of putting these. Sometimes we put these ordinances in, and like on the truck ordinance and on the R5 ordinance, we get some feedback that makes sense, and we could adjust it. So if we want to make it something a little bit,
Maybe not a renewal, but a review.
that doesn't require to go through the rezoning process, but could simply prove that, this service mine has a heartbeat. I mean, it's
Right.
actually doing business. Then that accomplishes what the whole point of the limit is to accomplish. And so we could come up with some idea on that.
Yeah, it
But
could be
right now it's
something-
5 years, and then it requires to go through the planning board again
5 years for what size?
for anything that's under the PDMR.
Under the PD?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't do a PD unless you were doing a large,
Well, anything over 10 acres, it would have to be a PD.
right.
And anything, but remember, if it's less than 10 acres, you could do it as conditional zoning, but it has to be closed out in 3 years, right?
That's the ones that
so
come in.
if
and
you
say,
were a
Still falls under
larger-
a
that's
state
the ones that come in and
permit.
say, I'm digging a pond, but I want to sell the dirt. We don't want to keep them selling the dirt. We just want them to do it for 30 years for a 4-acre pond.
Yeah, but you still falling under, once you break that acre, you back to state again. You're under a state permit, and the state considers anything over that acre a mine, a surface mine.
Correct.
It don't matter if it's a pond, a fish pond, a cow hole, or what it is. So once you break that acre, you back under a state permit again, so you falling under the EPA rules on your erosion control. You following under all their same guidelines again, whether or not you want to call it a dirt mine, a fish pond, a watering hole,
But
a
you're
swimming
limited to the-
pool.
You're limited to the size you permitted for, right? You can't just go from 4 acres to 10 acres.
No, you can't, no,
And that's why if there was, you want to look at
but
it.
that's state regulated.
That's right, but they're not regulating it. And that's what I'm trying to share with you, that it would give us an opportunity to say, all right, at the end of the 5 years, because the licensing helps us have a tracking record. And we can see, all right, show us the reports that you file with the state. It's still active, keep on going. We can't change it, but we're trying to make sure it doesn't sit out there for 30 years for a 3-acre pond, or it doesn't grow to 8 acres because nobody's,
And
State's
this
not
might be a
watching.
silly question, but I'm gonna ask it just for the sake of asking it. Why do you care if it's sitting there inactive or not active or whatever? Why would the county care whether or not it's active or not?
well, I think-
Why would we
I think
spend
it-
taxpayer money to go look to see if it's active or inactive?
Well, I think it's a danger if it's inactive and they haven't done what they said they were gonna do according to permit, slope the sides so kids don't slide off and fall into it. I think it becomes a danger. It's like a pool that's not fenced in. Why would we care? Because it's a danger.
Yeah, but
That's just one reason. That's one reason we would care.
are you thinking that there's 30 pits around the county dug straight down all the way around the thing to where you can't get out of it? I mean, I don't understand where the fear is, and maybe I just ain't been to enough pits. I've only been to all of them here, in some of the surrounding counties. But where is the fear of, I mean, has that happened that I
Well,
don't know about?
Let me ask you this, and then if we don't agree, we just don't agree, but I think there is a fear that something could happen because it's not taken care of. There's a reason why the state wants them slow. Second thing is.
But you could
if
have
they-
that
if they go from-
anything.
If they, it could. If it goes from 3 acres to 8 acres, are you asking, should we care about that as well?
As far as the county goes.
Yeah, I would say we would, because neighbors came in and they spoke and they said, hey, this guy wants to dig a pond. We're gonna let him dig the pond, and it'll be through in 3 years. You won't have any problem with big trucks coming around. It's not for just a dirt mine. 10 years later, they got dirt mine going on over there. Now, I get it, it's a state permit, but it allows us to at least make sure it doesn't grow outside the bounds.
Yeah, but if you got the rights, I'm just asking, instead of making it, law or whatever, you got the rights now to come and measure my building, right? And so I'm paying the right taxes. Do you need anything to come measure my pond? Is there a certain law somewhere saying you got to come measure my building?
We need a
Well,
way to
if
track it.
because if the activity goes, as you know, when we rezone a property the previous way through through an industrial zoning. We're not rezoning the entire property.
Right.
We're rezoning just the impacted area, right? And that's the excavation area and that area, that buffer around it that DNR
And
requires.
access.
And so if they exceed that boundary, they're violating, they're operating in an area that is not properly zoned for that excavation. And so that's kind of if it goes beyond what they've been approved for and outside, that circle of zoning,
So would our local
then
code
they're in
enforcement-
violation, right?
So would our local code enforcer now,
Mm-hmm.
if he come out, because in the files, you got a copy of our plan.
Yeah.
I mean, could he not do that now without having to make some kind of a,
Well, generally we operate on a complaint, right? And so if someone comes to us and says, "Hey, y'all approved, a 10-acre pond. He's now he's got to be at least 20 acres."
yeah,
Then at that point we can go out there and say, "Look, you've only been approved in this area. You're now expanded outside of this area." DNR shouldn't have approved it anyway because DNR knows the area that you're approved to dig in. But that's how we would have to go out there and shut down the work outside of that approved zoning area.
Right.
Just like if you were to build a building,
sure, without a permit.
yeah, and expand onto your neighboring property that's not properly zoned.
And the
So, similar.
licensing makes it less expensive for our constituents, because it puts it, where your pits are,
Sure.
so it puts it on you to, at the end of the 5 years or whatever, when you get the license, do we have the reports, we can tell where we're at. We don't have to send them out there for no cause, no reason, It's a way to track it, for one thing, that would help us know if they're complying with zoning, complying with the state. Has it been sloped, if it's closed, is it closed? You gotta have some mechanism to track it. I don't think it's gonna make it more difficult for folks.
It sounds like it is on our side of the table, on something like that, because we're assuming the risk. Take for an example, the McCall tract. You got $2 million in a piece of property, $50,000 in permit, another $300,000 in prep. Well, by the time you get all that done, now I only got 5 years to sell all the dirt now. I've got 200,000 yards of dirt to sell.
I don't think that's true. That's not what the ordinance says.
And like I said, it's something that we could correct, but that's basically what was approved. It's good for 5 years, and then it has to go through planning board.
It changed that wording so
Yeah.
that it shall be renewed for an active mine that has filed its reports and so forth.
That's
And
right.
that's why I'm here. It does need to be changed. It does. That's why I'm here.
We're not saying we can't tweak it, make it better, but I think the licensing is important for us to be able to have a mechanism to track that. We just need to be careful, like in your situation,
Well-
that it didn't cause you to spend all that money and then get shut down by some other board.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's exactly why I'm here. It does, Jamie said, this is fluid. We can change it. That's why I'm here. We need to change it. You just said the same thing.
years address then?
That's on mine.
The 10 years is
Yeah,
on the
and
new
I'm
one right
wondering-
now.
Relation put, maybe? I don't remember the,
So
okay.
I talked with Reggie, and we realized y'all voted so fast, because it got drug out with all the people that were against us, and then the motion was made, and we didn't get a chance to say, wait a minute, that 10-year don't make sense. And then 2 minutes later, we voted on Harco's, and the stipulation wasn't put on him. So it wasn't an across-the-board decision that was being made, and we changed the hours, so I asked Reggie, I said, can we remove the 10-year deal? And he came and asked you, and you said, no, that wasn't an option, because we'd already done the first reading, couldn't do the second reading.
We
So
would
that's
have had to
why we're
table
here-
it again.
That's why
Well,
we're here today.
And I might be looking at an earlier version. Didn't we change the hours?
We did.
We did.
Wasn't it like?
Changed it 7 to 5, Monday to Saturday.
Yeah,
Okay.
we wanted it to be uniform for everybody.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So this is wrong. I remember we changed that. The problem is what gets uploaded into Municode takes like 6 months, and so I might be looking at I might be looking at the older version. I apologize for that, but
Let's look at something making where the permit, not the permit, but the licensing that we do is more of a shall be renewed versus.
but the
And maybe at the staff level, so they don't have to come to the board
Yeah.
to renew it. Then you
But I
guys
will
don't
say
even have to worry about a board. You
it
just kinda
would-
get
it-
full and you keep rocking.
It would have the same wording, except it would be 10 years, and so we still have to change it. And so it would require renewal, so we do have to change it to exactly what you said, that, you know, if you're operating in good standing, you know, then it, you know, the zoning shall continue.
If
And we
you're up
put
to
that
par,
in the
you're
PD
good.
wording.
Isn't the license being renewed each year?
The
based on-
license, it's different, all right? This is, the 5 years is a reversion to previous zoning, right? The license is an annual, which we haven't been enforcing it, but our code clearly states that with the exception of a few entities on here, which Surface Mines is not included, it is required to have a business license. So,
You have a business license, but is there a separate business license?
That's what I was asking.
Okay, we have
No.
a business license.
right.
Okay.
We had talked about having a license for the permits.
Right, and we could put,
The
and,
mines.
Pit operation.
and so that's one of the things we didn't change. We had discussed is making a special conditions for surface mines under business license, where when they open up, they have to provide us a copy of their DNR permit and their copy of their bond, and then on your renewal basis, you know, a copy of your annual report that you send to DNR anyway.
Do we categorize our business license? Like when you get a business license? I'm
Yeah,
just
we
curious.
do. Like financial institutions have
I was just
a
Wasn't
different,
sure how we break that.
and,
down.
and
Is
some
that
of
in
them.
place now then?
What's that?
Is that in place now? If I had a mine, I don't have to get a license to,
No, you do have to get a license.
You gotta get a business.
You
You're-
have to get
you're
a
operating
business
business.
license,
I mean,
but there
for
are no
each-
additional requirements associated with it, like the providing the DNR permit and, or EPD permit and whatever else you need.
now you said something about you have a state license, business license. Do you have a county business license as well?
No, we have county.
Okay,
We have, yeah.
I got you, okay.
We
And they have a
county.
state permit.
Our
license-
state is a
That
permit.
license would be renewed each year, like it already is, but we're gonna require the copy of the DNR report on that mine with the renewal.
That's right. We
To
don't
me,
have
that-
that wording in place yet.
Okay, I thought we had it in
That
place.
part wasn't changed. That was actually discussed as a concept when we were approving this. So when we go up to amend this to correct the expiration date for the PDMR mines, we can then also include in there that wording for surface mines and business occupation
And I
licenses.
think if you do that, then you change the wording that, if the license have been renewed according to whatever.
That's right.
Then the zoning renews for another 10 years or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's shall,
Exactly,
it's not
right.
up to the board to decide without changing the code. If you've got your license every year and you filed your DNR report with us every year, it's not gonna affect you because you're doing it all right.
Ain't
There's
gonna
some
affect
who
us at all.
aren't doing that.
Well, but the thing is, those people need to be not just shut down from that dirt pit. You do me a favor by ban them. You can't have another dirt pit in Effingham County.
Well,
That's what would happen.
Fine them, tear them up.
If they're not in good standing with their license and they're not filing the DNR reports with state of Georgia, then we could notify state of Georgia, hey, that John Doe and Jane Doe have this 10-acre pit, it has been inactive, there's no reports filed with us. Would you check in that? And they will probably shut their pit down and we will not renew a license with them.
Well, and that was a little bit of a joke, because the thing is there's loopholes to get around anything, then they gonna open the next one in the kid's name and the next one in the grandkid's name, so that was a little joke, you know, with knocking out my competition, but, I don't know, I mean, I just wanted, I know that we could probably go line by line and we could discuss the whole thing, you know, but one, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it some. I mean, he brought up a good point. If you remember, there was only 3 of us here to even help discuss the trucking ordinance. Me, Alan Zipper, and somebody. So we was heavily involved in that. We want to be involved in what you're doing. We want to put our input in, whether it's a good side or a bad side, whatever. We want y'all to understand from our side of the fence, the effects of what we're quickly doing here at the counter, you know. Because back then on the truck route deal, one of the big deals was our bridges. It was a big deal about our bridges. And I agree with that. We done a study on a bridge so that we could cross this bridge at the time. So just like we was involved in that, we want to be involved in this, because if things go the way we would like to see them go, we're gonna be here in a year trying to permit another dirt permit somewhere. You know, and we discussed it during some of the past meetings. Every project, every single project, a dump truck pulls up on it. There's no way around it. There's a dump truck pulls up on it, whether he's hauling sand to lay brick or dirt to build a foundation or rock for a parking lot. So we want to be involved with y'all's decisions that y'all making, which I've seen a bunch of y'all. We typically go to Effingham days at the Capitol. Why? Because we want to get involved and listen to what's going on and be a part of the good change, not the bad change.
We want you involved.
You know,
And-
I know.
And
I
it
mean,
may look like we decide and do things quickly, they don't happen quickly. There's thousands of dollars spent in studies by experts smarter than us on this board. We just use our wisdom from that information. Then we advertise. We've had workshops, open workshops, just to discuss ordinances or anything, and no one shows up. No one.
well, they might, if they don't get to speak, then they probably gonna quit coming.
They get to speak. I open the floor to them to speak.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's,
They get the chance. We're constantly trying to communicate, but we don't do anything quick. I think that inference is just not correct. It may look like it to you, but we don't do anything quick. And we're always willing to tweak, as we are here now, but
well,
We just felt like that wasn't understood the way y'all voted on it. It was discussed and then y'all automatically voted on it. And when we were thinking, I said, I just don't know if that's what they intended, was to automatically revert the zoning back. So that's what we really wanted.
That would,
But that is how it was
yeah,
wrote
that would be,
after.
I think
that
that's,
would take public hearing. I mean, that's a whole nother
yeah, we can fix that.
rezoning.
It's not designed just to revert back. It is designed to, when the completion, to revert back.
And I
Okay?
think with the things, my understanding, and I could be wrong, like with the berms and so, that was the idea of the PD, is you kind of have that discussion specific to that property.
Right.
Because then you have a PD document that becomes
Right.
part of the,
Yeah,
that's the way I took it.
yeah.
And-
then no
and
one could
whenever
say,
we
hey,
was
there's
talking
industrial
about the
property next to
berms-
me, so I want industrial.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right.
when we was talking about the berms, I knew a lot of that stuff because sitting here through some of these meetings, we've been applying this berm deal to some of the warehouses, you know, to knock that noise down. I get that, you know, but just for quick numbers,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like on the McCall Road pit, I thought to myself, I said, you know, if they made me burn this whole sucker, let's just say I was at a PD and they made me burn this whole project. So I done quick numbers, how much dirt it'd take, how much time it'd take, you know, because now with that berm, you falling under something else with the state. Now I got to grass this berm, got to maintain this berm, all this. So quick numbers, don't hold me to this. It was about $600,000 to add to purchase of the land, permitting, prep work and all of that. There was an additional $600,000 added to if the board decided that day, because I got 100 people out here that's against it, if they decided that day to, well, we're gonna put a 10-foot berm around it. And I just got to thinking, I was like, you know, that berm is not on your checklist whenever you check in, all right? The commissioner said, I need to be on a truck route. I bought a piece of land on a truck route. I need to do this. I checked off all these boxes, and then all of a sudden, you're up to the table. Okay, I'm gonna drop another one on you. Now you're gonna put a berm around it. That's an additional $600,000. That, how do you plan for that? How do you know where that's gonna come
Yeah.
into effect and when it's not? Because
I hear you.
just like the McCall pit, there's two houses, but there is no house. Everybody that was complaining, they was a mile away.
Right.
Where would you ever decide whether or not you need to plan on putting that berm or not whenever it comes? Because we can't come to y'all every time and say, hey, we thinking about buying a piece of land. What y'all think about it? You think you're gonna make me put a berm around it? Or do you not think, I'm trying to get my business plan together. I'm not fixing to come tell y'all
Well,
before I
suggest-
close
suggest
on it.
Buy that land conditional upon getting the zoning you want. That's how most people would do it.
But, well, and
That's how you do
I'm
it.
similar to most people.
Yeah, that's how you
But,
would do it. Like, I don't give you an example.
but it don't quite work that way whenever it
McCall
comes
Road,
to,
Little McCall Road, there's like half a dozen houses right there. And I don't know what the requirement was, but it's like, it's not very much of a buffer. What is it now for the buffer between that and residential for a dirt pit?
what pit on Little McCall Road you talking about?
Well, courthouse in Little McCall is a dirt.
Oh,
pit
the one on Courthouse, the old,
They're a burn fit. If you go
Morgan.
by and look at it, they were gonna leave a 50-foot undisturbed buffer, whereas a tree here, tree here, tree here, tree there. In the foresight of this board, they did require a berm just in case, and it was a good thing, and those constituents would have been up here again, because that was in their backyard. But I'm with you, and I think this board.
but you know
anybody
that
agree with
berm can be removed at the end, right?
you? Yeah, it's gonna be.
It can be sold.
Yeah.
Because whenever
Yeah, we're getting
Tim
stuff out.
Hutchins,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, got into that,
Yeah.
we actually did. We took him up on the offer and went and put offer in on buying that dirt pit. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't buy it because somebody bought it right ahead of us. But, so I need to thank Tim Hutchins whenever I see him. I appreciate the little stab that he put in there. But when we went out there, that berm is not required. That berm is actually a windrow of trash, is what that berm was. So the windrow of trash, by requiring that down the road, if you don't put some stipulations in there, guess what? You've got a buried inert landfill along your property line. Is that what you want?
Yeah, I think you're getting into areas now, because that berm will go at the end of that. It's not gonna,
It don't have to,
Yeah.
but it can.
it can.
But
It
what
should.
that was the Grubbins pushed off there because we the ones hauled the dirt out of that pit for Morgan Corp. So I know what was there.
Well,
But
we-
all they
we
done was
may
pushed
need
all
to-
their trees and all over there, but that wasn't, it's illegal to bury trash, right?
Yeah.
Of course it is. But it's not illegal to cover trash up that's on top of the ground. So that whole thing, you just built a above-ground berm inert landfill. And again, that's what I'm trying to say. Is that what you want? Because you're asking to add it in on the PD side.
Well, the staff can note that, because that, we need to protect against people burying trash with berms. So you give us some good insight to make sure we have policies and regulations in place that prevent that in this new ordinance.
But if it's temporary, how can you stop it? It's just grubbins. It's just clearing and grubbins.
We have to look at it. It's good. I'm glad you brought it to our attention, because the attention is not for that berm to be used to cover up trash. It's not intended for that.
Well, it's intended just to knock down noise, right?
Noise and sight and those things that neighbors don't want to look at right behind their house, since it's really an industrial operation for a time period. If you buy a house in a residence, you don't want to look back there and see a dump truck picking up, dumping, and you want it does deflect the noise as well. So there's a lot of reasons you'd have it. But it would each one would be looked at individually, to see how it really impacts the residents next to it. And not much I can see, that you've got some ideas from this board, how you can not look at that individually. If you got a house that backs up to,
No, I mean, that's the reason we do it the way we're doing it, so we look at each
Yeah.
one of them.
And if you got a house that backs up to somebody else's property, maybe, you know, hindsight 2020, should they have left a buffer or a berm as well? Or are they clearing all the way up to the property line?
well, I'm not gonna
It
pursue
goes
that-
from both sides of the fence,
yeah,
you
I'm not
know.
gonna pursue that question. I think we've covered the information that we gotta get ready for our next, board meeting here. We got 8 minutes, so I'm gonna close the workshop. But appreciate you coming.
So are we going to tweak that a little bit
Yeah.
on the,
Yeah, and I did notice, and Stephanie showed me where the temporary ordinances were. We discussed, I mean, I know there was some confusion with regards to the operating hours. You know, some went 8 to 5, some went 7 to 5, so on and so forth. But what we determined was 7 to 5 was what we wanted to have on this, and what is in here is 8 to 5. So we'll change that as well. We'll come up with the wording like you mentioned with regards to the 5 years, and we'll make it clearer on the PD MR is, what things can, the county might consider as development requirements for the property. And that are things where we specifically mention the county may consider berms requirements, the county may consider buffer requirements, et cetera. And, we'll come up with a few more, so they'll know that, these things be on the radar for, on this, so.
But we'll definitely touch on the renewal process. I
Yes,
think like
absolutely.
Roger said, if they show they're compliant, then that can be
Automatically,
renewed
yeah.
at staff level.
Right.
And doesn't have to come through all this. Okay.
Gotcha.
When you get those things together, if you want to,
Personal, since it's road
No,
on
you're,
ours,
this is,
we won't have to have another reading, or,
I think this is
To
all
change
new stuff.
ours.
yours isn't subject to this.
Yeah.
no, ours is, it's number 10 on our things, that they made a motion to vote on. That's our whole issue.
No, I
Number,
think,
number 10 on ours.
On the
is-
McCall Road, there was a 10-year time frame on that
Okay.
specific pit
Now
that
I
they
know what
had.
Ordinance is not gonna help them.
Now I know where the 10 years comes from. Okay, I got you.
So when y'all made the recommendation, the staff made recommendation, y'all went ahead and put the PD recommendations on there because y'all were voting on them that day.
I got
So
you.
y'all attached those recommendations to us.
Let
if
me
we
get
change our
back to you on
ordinance,
that.
we can adjust.
Possible, once we change the ordinance, we have to come back and,
Yeah,
We may have
not gonna
to,
automatically change it on y'all's zone, I wouldn't think.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not gonna immediately affect, you'll be able to keep developing the properties, and you just kind of go through the process of what I would imagine if it was a condition, because you're industrial zoning, you're not PDMR. So if it was a condition of the zoning approval, then the way you amend it is through that process again. And,
So we need to get it amended, so we all just get together and tell us.
yeah, so let us fix the PDMR first, and then we'll go back to yours. You should be able to, obviously continue to move forward, on yours, and,
Sure.
and they shouldn't have to go back to the planning board. That's just something we can do right here at a text level, I think, on that, I would think.
I don't think we can, because technically right now, removing a condition under the current zoning ordinance is considered a
Rezoning,
rezoning.
technically.
And so it's,
But we could do that without having to make them
that
go back.
requires public hearing and all that fun stuff.
Well, we have to
Leave
get
it in there.
planning board
They'll
public
leave it in
hearing on that.
Yeah. So, but again, what, we'll say is, we amended the county ordinance, and then we are recommending approval to amend, their ordinance to remove those conditions.
I guess what I'm saying, you could just send that on the planning board. They wouldn't have to file or do anything. We could do it from the boards requesting this. I don't know why it has to come from a
And I think
constituent.
that's
He's correct, sir.
Huh?
He's correct.
I know he's correct, but why couldn't we request as a board that we want to make this conditional use that we've approved comply with our current ordinance? And we want to send it back to the planning board as the board, so they don't have to pay any fee or reapply. We address
We can
that.
initiate a rezoning,
That's what I'm,
I think.
Wait a minute,
I'm talking about,
when was this rezoned?
I'm calling it a rezoning, it's to change.
That's fine.
I'm just
So
saying,
was
we
it the
should,
last
we should
meeting?
initiate that once we have this done.
Can
and
we
not
do-
make them go back through it.
Uh,
We can initiate the planning board,
Kind of like a housekeeping matter.
yeah,
is what you-
yeah.
Stephanie, can we do and I just know this from my previous state that I worked at. If it's the following meeting, can approval of something be subject to a reconsideration at tonight's meeting? Or would that have to be on the agenda?
At tonight's meeting?
Yeah. No?
No, it's not on the agenda. It would have to be on an agenda.
Okay.
We could do it on the first meeting in February as a
All
reconsideration.
right, never mind.
I would say, let's move
I
forward
tried.
with recommendations, get our
Yeah, I
zoning
mean-
squared away. We gotta go to our other board meeting, get it squared away, and then let's look at, you can get with Lee and zoning about how we can instigate that process of changing those conditions, but going through the planning board, but not making the constituent have to come through that process again.
I just hate to stir the crowd back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Unfortunately, I mean, it's gonna be a public, I mean, it's right, you know, I mean,
Yeah. It won't be-
Appreciate the workshop, Jamie. Thank you for getting us involved in it. We want to be involved in them every time. Please let us know. But anyhow, thank y'all. Look forward to working with y'all on into the future.
All right, man. Thank you all.
Thank you. All righty. Does anybody need a quick break, or can we go into the meeting?
Yeah, I'd